So I've returned to one of Australia's most famous racetracks to test another fast Hyundai. This is the Hyundai i30 N sedan. It's the fastest N car you can buy if you pair it with the dual clutch automatic, which this has. This is also known as the Elantra N overseas. It's quite a popular car in the US, so that's why that's in the title. And because it's meant to be the fastest and quickest N car you can buy from Hyundai, I wanted to give this a proper shakedown on some roads way out of metropolitan Sydney and actually tell you what this is like to drive when you're actually using the power that you're paying for. And to do that, I'll walk you around the exterior features, the interior features, and take it for a drive. So with that out of the way, my name's Cameron. This is Product Review Cars. Let's get into it. Now the i30 N sedan is offered in 2 transmission options, and that's it. It's the same price for either one at $49,000 before on-road costs. And to be honest, that is a pretty good bargain for what you're getting. And let me show you what exactly you are getting. First of all, let's talk about the front design here. It's obviously way more aggressive than the traditional i30 sedan. There are bigger intakes and there are bigger grills here to allow more air to flow through to this car, especially around the side here. This all flows through to help with cooling around the brakes and also helps cool this very powerful motor. And along the side here, we are getting upgraded wheels, tires, and brakes. These are N-specific brakes, which are cool because they're also developed in-house. And these tires were actually part of the reason why it took so long for this review to come out, because these tires were in short demand with everything that's going on at the moment. So these are also quite special for this car because they're made for Hyundai's N division, as indicated by the HN here on the sidewall. We also have some aggressive looking side skirts. This red goes really well with this paint. I really didn't think that was going to be the case, but here it is. Also some very distinct i30 sedan styling along the side. And as we move towards the back, you can see this wing very obviously standing up here. This is a proper bit of functional aero at the back, and it's got 3 support beams as well. Looks really cool. Love the overhangs. Goes really well with this car's design. Although my biggest complaint is I can't see it from inside the car. Whether I'm looking from either side of the side mirrors or the rear vision mirror, it's just tucked out of the way. So it's only really for outside looks and obviously for a bit of functionality to add a bit of downforce to the rear. I do like this light bar that runs across the back. There's your N badging to indicate this is a full fat N product. And then below we have a special diffuser here with some light amounts of aero. Might do a little bit there. We do have a rain light, which is inspired from some race cars. I do like that quite a lot. Aerodynamics underneath the car actually has been improved with the i30 N sedan. So this diffuser actually just will help that air exit out the back a bit more smoothly. So it actually is a little bit functional. And now we can see these gargantuan exhaust tips out the back. They're distinct for an i30N like this, and they also make an absolute racket. It's an amazing sound and it's ludicrous, and I have to say it is louder than the i30 hatch when it comes to those overruns and burbles and pops. It's not going to come through on camera all that well, but here's what it sounds like. Now the i30 N sedan is actually a far more practical car than you might think. It's actually more practical than the Kona N. There's a massive trunk that you have here, and it just reveals a lot of boot space. Underneath the boot floor, there is a spare tire, which is good in case you get a flat, considering how rare these tires are to come across at the moment. But what you will notice is that there's actually an additional strengthening beam inside the car. It's extra cross bracing there, and it helps increase the rigidity of this car by up to 29%. The only problem is that gets in the way if you want to put anything through to the rear seats, because it's actually just something that's creating a bit of a barrier. They've tried to make it a little bit higher off the ground so you can put skis and all that through, but it is something that's going to get in the way. Don't remove that though, because removing 29% of your car's rigidity will be noticeable. Now, if you want to get the most of the boot space in this car, you actually have to pull on both of these tabs here at the same time, and that releases the rear bench. I say bench because this is a single folding bench in the rear seat. So come around to the other side, you just pull this whole bench forwards and you have yourself more storage on the inside, but it's about as practical as a 2-seater at this point because you can't put any more passengers in, obviously, once you fold these down. Now, this is the best interior you can get out of all the N cars. It's the most driver focused, but the i20N does combat this for having the best interior. But I just think the way this is all focused around the driver just a little bit more makes this the best one if you like a driver focused interior. There's 2 10.25-inch displays up front. There's some buttons for your controls, for your media, and also your climate controls. We have heated cooled seats up front, a heated steering wheel as well. Here's our shifter just next to us, which has actually got a sequential pattern when you want to shift into manual mode, which I love. Instead of the plus being forwards and negative being down, you go to change down a gear by pushing forwards and then go up a gear by pulling on it, which is just like a race car. I love that. And you've also got some USBs up front, 2 of them. You've got a 12-volt socket as well. There's a wireless charging pad, but there's no wireless Apple CarPlay. Here's your manual handbrake that you get on every N car, which is great. They brought this in. And there's also another USB inside the center console here. These bucket seats as well are very comfortable, but I do miss the extra supportive ones you could find in the i30N Premium. That thing was just so much more aggressive, and I think those seats would do really well in here and help shed a bit more weight, but these are still very comfortable for a very long trip, like the one I took to get out here today. Now on the steering wheel, you have your classic i30N steering wheel. There's some large paddles on the back. They're made of plastic, but they feel good and they have a nice satisfying click to them. You've also got your buttons on the steering wheel to change drive modes and quickly access N mode and custom modes. And you also have this button down here, which comes with the dual clutch cars, called N Grin Shift, and that gives you overboost for 20 seconds. So it's like a push to pass button. It's so cool when that happens. So you go ahead and press N Grin Shift and you can go ahead and go just a tiny bit faster. Now there is a blank space here on the right hand side where the drive mode button used to be on the i30 Sedan, just the usual one, but here it's just a blank space. I'm not entirely sure what it's used for, but it would have been nice just to get rid of that altogether. And just all the nice amenities around here, like the upgraded Bose speakers, the stitching, and you know, the more aggressive looking pedals, the N branding. And finally, where this car gets a slight advantage over the hatchback is that you get a bit more leg room and a bit more feet room, but then because this has a sloping roof that goes back to that aggressive looking rear, I do have a lack of headroom a little bit if I put my head all the way back, and that's going to be something that's going to be a problem for people who have a tall torso or someone who's taller than me. I'm 5'11" back here, and this is behind my driving position, and if you've got a tall head, you're going to go ahead and hit yourself on the roof if you hit any bumps. So that's just a slight issue with the back seats, but if you're a bit more forwards, you do have a bit more headroom like that. Now, what is obvious back here is that this car is not intended for rear passengers to have the best time possible. Instead, this is where some weight savings have happened. So there's no USBs in the back. You have to ask the passengers up front to use their USBs. There's only one cargo net back here, which I find kind of interesting. And there's no rear heated seats or anything like that. So it is a basic back seat. And obviously there's no armrest in the middle because this is the big folding bench in the rear. So you can sort of tell that Hyundai was going to make this an easier piece to take out of the car for extra weight reduction when you go to a track. That's at least my perception here. But if you do have to put baby seats in the back, at least there's some ISOFIX points here as well. All right, so I'm starting up this driving section with a lap around Mountain Panorama because it'd be rude not to if I'll come all the way out here and tell you what this car is like to drive. So setting off, we're just gonna get going, and I am in N mode because I thought that's most applicable for a public racetrack like this. So essentially the i30N Sedan is the sort of flagship version of the N Performance light up. It's meant to be the quickest, the most capable, and something that's as more closely aligned to the TCR race car, which the N Performance brand sort of aligns itself with. And you've also got some WRC heritage in there as well, but this is obviously for tarmac. Now the i30N Sedan immediately feels very planted. It's a sedan, so you have a longer wheelbase, and going through the initial corners like this, you feel like you've got more stability, as if this thing is almost rear-wheel drive, and that's helped by that E limited slip differential. This thing up front does a really good job of shuffling power between the outside wheel and the inside wheel. I really like how this thing drives despite this being front-wheel drive. Obviously sedans are traditionally rear-wheel drive. This is purely front-wheel drive. Now under the bonnet we have that familiar 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged motor producing 206 kilowatts and just under 400 newton meters of torque. And if you hit N Grin Shift, you'll get an overboost as well. This engine is what Hyundai describes as a flat power engine, so it's meant to deliver flat torque curves, and it means that it just feels like it's a more rapid car. It feels less like a turbocharged car, which normally has a giant power surge and then starts to decrease later in the rev range. This thing is designed to be revved out. Although what I found in other N cars, that red line is just a little short. Since it's just above 7,000 RPM, I would like it to see a little bit beyond 7,000 RPM. Now driving around, this is a very comfortable car in a straight line. This is in its stiffest setting with the suspension and most aggressive steering and most aggressive engine setup and most aggressive gearbox setup in N mode. And I can dial that all back by just flicking into different drive modes, which is great. It can even quieten the exhaust and you just get a pretty comfortable semi-luxurious sedan, and it's quite nice to drive. But I'm obviously going to go into N mode because that's just when things come alive. It feels subdued and feels a little bit like a tranquilized tiger when you put it into eco mode or normal mode, and it really wants to come alive and just feels like it's doing what it's supposed to do when you put it into N mode or custom mode. Now going through a sharper corner like this, I love the faster steering ratios in N mode. I hardly have to cross over my hands. They didn't even go to 180 degrees, so that was cool. And it just means that you've got a pretty capable track car setup. And you can sit nice and close to the wheel here, and it just feels like I'm very connected with the car. I love the driving position. I'm sat low in the car, which is a bit better than I found in the i30 hatchback, which sat a little bit higher than I liked, even with the bucket seats. But since this track is limited to around 60 kilometers an hour, I think it's time we actually hit some faster sections of road and see how this thing performs at speed. So now that we're out on the faster roads, I'm gonna show you some different features this car has to help it go nice and fast. Now, something you can hear in the background is the active sound design, which is the fake engine sounds that this car can produce. This is what sporty sounds like. This is what high performance sounds like. But this is what TCR sounds like. So if you want your car to sound like the Hyundai race car, you can. Now I've also got auto creep turned off here, which gives me a bit more control at low speeds. It basically prevents that auto creep that happens in automatic gearboxes when you go to drive. So it's like a manual gearbox or like one of those high-end Porsche 911 GT3 RS gearboxes. I think that's kind of cool. You've also got N track sense shift, which I've got on at the moment. So if it detects I start driving a bit more aggressively, so if I start to accelerate and then brake and then accelerate and then brake, it's going to start going, oh, hang on, we better start shifting gears a little bit faster to match, because this is the purpose of having the DCT, is it does all the thinking for you in drive, and it's not just a dumb gearbox. So it's very smart like that. You've also got N power shift. So if I go into manual mode, shift down a couple of gears, here we go into second, and I'm going to go through for a big change into third. Oh yeah, it basically, what it does is that it gives you enhanced acceleration between shifts, which is a really cool experience. Now while we're along here, I'm going to also show you what this N grid shift button does. It basically knocks the gearbox into the lowest possible gear and then surges your power and gives you a bit more overboost through the turbocharger to give you like a push to pass button or something that will help you go through at the exit of a corner. It's a really cool button. So I'm going to activate it now. So I've got 20 seconds. There's our lowest gear, and oh my gosh, that power shift is insane. I cannot describe to you what that feels like. I unfortunately can't have you here in the driver's seat to see what that feels like. Well, what it is that you're basically going through shifts and you think, oh my gosh, how can we even go any faster than this? It hits a shift and keeps going. This N grin shift is definitely doing what the button says and putting a grin on my face, because that's a lot of fun. And it also makes that exhaust really quite loud. So if you go to press it again, it's so much fun, but it does need a cooldown, so I can't go ahead and press it again. It needs about a 40-second cooldown there. It's counting down from 35 seconds and I'll be able to use it again. So it is something you have to use strategically, kind of like the nitrous buttons you used back in your video game days. Now dynamically, this car is stiffer, it's a little bit lighter. It has a one-piece drive shaft at the front, which is quite good for weight savings and something that's actually been brought down from the race cars that Hyundai develops. However, it means that if something goes wrong, you have to replace a giant unit and not just different parts, so that might be interesting further down the track. And just this whole driving experience feels far more connected. I feel like I've got more control over this chassis than I do with the hatch, but the hatch has a bit more of a sharper turn in and it feels a little bit more nimble than this. This feels like a proper sedan, and that E limited slip diff does do a good job, although there is a bit of torque steer when you are getting on it at high revs, but that car quickly sorts it out. And what I would recommend using is custom mode, because Australian roads aren't perfect, and if you're in N mode all the time, that harder hitting suspension is going to get a bit back braking. So what I love doing is setting up custom mode here to make sure I've got an aggressive engine, an aggressive gearbox, but a nice relaxed suspension setup, so it's a bit more like a touring car feel, and also having, you know, a little lighter steering so I don't have to feel like I'm laboring away on some back roads. So that's quite a lot of fun, and you can still have that loud exhaust in custom mode. And then you know, if you have someone in the car that doesn't like any of those things, you can dial everything back and turn up what you want, so the passenger doesn't have to listen to a massively loud exhaust, but you can still have a really sporty driving experience. So these brakes also have a nice big bite to them as well. They are strong on the initial engagement, and you really have to dig deep to hit 100% for that brake engagement, which I think is quite good, because it means that you've got a nice amount of control. So if we go for an emergency stop now, oh yeah, that's got a good bite, and you definitely can feel that this car is capable of coming up to a quick stop, and that quick stop also allows you to do a nice sharp turn in as well, which I think is really cool. Now, while I'm doing this review mainly with the DCT version, which is the faster version of the i30N sedan, I've also got the manual here to show you a few differences, because for the same price, you can get a 6-speed manual or you can go for the 8-speed automatic. And now visually, they both look the same on the outside, but there are some major differences on the inside. So for starters, you have a 6-speed manual instead of an 8-speed automatic, and getting off the line isn't that hard at all. What is cool is that the shifter height is actually very close to the steering wheel, so it's only a short movement from your hand from the steering wheel to the shifter, which is great. And then that's really what you have to know about this manual transmission. It's nice and slick and easy to get off the mark. And you know, if you're looking for manual engagement, this is very good, but the DCT is still excellent. I really think that this car is better suited with the DCT, but if you're dead set on a manual, sure, you have the option here, and it's a very good one too. Now, the steering wheel lacks the paddle, so it feels a bit tidier and more easy to operate in the hand than ones with paddles on it. And dynamically, the cars are the same. There is really no difference here, although the engagement just feels a little extra because I'm using my left foot to obviously move the clutch, and then I'm getting to move gears with my left hand. Now, instead of N grin shift, which actually is like an on-demand overboost feature, we have a rev button. And so that basically turns on and off auto rev matching, which blips the throttle when you go and shift down the gears. So if I'm in third for now, for example, and then I go to shift down, the car's doing that. Go to first, and you can hear that too. And power-wise, it is still very quick. But personally, I thought the hatchback suited the manual better, and the sedan suits the 8-speed the best. So you're wondering whether or not to buy this car. Well, let me sort of explain what I think. Well, this is certainly the most driver-focused N car you can buy. It's the lowest to the ground, it's got the most aerodynamic design, and it's the quickest. So this thing really is the Halo performance car from Hyundai. And what's really cool is that if you like this but don't necessarily want a sedan, you can easily go for the hatch, and those few 0.3 seconds that you're going to lose out on because you didn't get the sedan version of this car won't feel at all any different unless you drove them back to back. And really the only reason why you're thinking about buying one of these is because you really like how it looks at the end of the day. Because to be honest, the other cars with the same power plant aren't all that different, but this one is the best to drive. It's the lowest to the ground, it feels aggressive, has a great driving position. This thing really takes everything that was good about the i30 sedan and just dials it up really well. It's sort of like going from Tabasco sauce to ghost pepper sauce. This thing is really quite spicy. Now look, I would have liked to see the inclusion of radar cruise control and maybe a few creature comforts for the back seats, considering there are some, but at the end of the day, if this thing is meant to be the most track-focused version of the N car lineup by having some sort of crossbeam in the boot and also having a bench folding rear seat, then I can understand why those sacrifices have been made. I'm a big fan of this car, but I don't think I would buy one myself. I think I'm more in line with what the i30N hatch is offering with the lightweight wheels and the lightweight bucket seats. That just felt a little bit more up my alley, but I can understand why someone might go for this because this is just a little bit faster and it's also really special in its own ways. Now, the best way to show your support for the channel is hitting that subscribe button down below, or if you liked this video, make sure you hit that like button. If you didn't like it, hit that dislike button, and if you have anything to say, again, jump down below and leave a comment. Now, thank you so much for watching. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you in the next one.